There are three pieces of direct literary evidence that link Emilia to the plays. The first of them is her poem, Salve Deus Rex Judeorum, 1611. This poem is 3,000 lines long. It appeared under her own name as Emilia, wife of Captain Vanya, and it comprises several different works. It comprises a country house poem at the end on Cookham. It comprises various introductions at the beginning that are addressed to the noble English ladies of England, and it includes a 160-line masque, which is in the form of a letter to Countess Mary Sidney, and a very long satirical crucifixion poem, which is the main poem in the collection, and is Salve Deus. And this satirical poem on the crucifixion is what gives us the clue that it was written by the same person as the Shakespearean plays, because, for example, in Midsummer Night's Dream, in the story of Pyramus and Thisbe, we have a very comic satirical crucifixion story. In As You Like It, in the story of Jane Smile, we have another satirical comic passion story, and in fact the Jewish satire in the plays, which is a comic satirical allegory, is very similar to the sort of allegory, the sort of satire that exists in Emilia's Salve Deus poem of 1611. The second piece of literary evidence is what I like to call the swan signatures. Now, in the Renaissance, there was the idea that the standard image of the great poet was a swan dying to music, and this image comes from Ovid, where it had been used a couple of times, and the idea was that the swan, when it knew it was going to die, would sing a tune, and that this was somehow emblematic of the great poet in the same way it was emblematic of Ovid. And it was used by at least a dozen poets. And in the Shakespearean plays, there are only 3 examples of swans dying to music. One of them is in Merchant of Venice, where it refers to Bassanio dying in Portia's tears. Another of them is in King John, where it refers to Henry, who is John's son. And the third one is in Othello. And the strange thing about the one in Othello is that we have the 1622 quarto of Othello, and it doesn't appear in it. So it was added in to Othello between 1622 and 1623, when the first folio was being written, in the form of 163 extra lines. And these lines expand the part of Emilia, and they also put in a feminist manifesto, and finally they put in the Willow song, Willow, Willow, Willow. So why is this important? Because these 4 names, Emilia, Willow, Johnson, Bassanio, just happen to be the 4 names of this woman, whose names are Emilia, being her first name, Johnson is her mother's name, Willow is the name of the family she was adopted into at the age of 7, and Bassanio, or Bassano, is her father's name, her family name. And statistically, this is not a coincidence. We can do an analysis on English names, and we know how many there are, and the chances of this being coincidence are just impossible. It's 99.9999999999999% certain that this is not coincidence, that this was created deliberately. So this is the fundamental piece of evidence that shows that Emilia has left behind her literary signatures on the plays to show everybody that she was this great poet who was dying like a swan to music. Now, the Bassano family trademark was a rabbit's foot, and it originally came about because the ghetto in Venice was thought to be the shape of a rabbit's foot, and they used it as the symbol that was on all their musical instruments. And when they became the court musicians to Henry VIII, they sent the king a crate of rabbits. So rabbits were important. And in 1594, somebody wrote a book called Willoughby His Avissa. Avissa meaning a vissa, the unseen, and avissa meaning also the female bird, the female avis. So the unseen bird of the Willoughby family, and Amelia was adopted into the Willoughby family at the age of 7. So Willoughby His Avissa is a 3,000-line poem which talks about a woman playwright who is never named, but we are told that her real name resembles Avissa, and she also lives near the theatre district, and this has been long recognised as the first book in the world ever to mention Shakespeare. And it also describes Avissa as a woman playwright who calls great numbers to the fields. And at the bottom of the title page, which is an Italianate title page that I've had investigated by the Metropolitan Museum, this definitely comes from Italian models, there are, surprise, surprise, 2 rabbits. And if you look at the sonnets, which were published in 1609, the Shakespearean sonnets, in exactly the same place on the front page, you find a pair of rabbits, just like the ones in Willoughby His Avissa. So this, for me, is evidence that links Willoughby His Avissa as Amelia's poem, it links it to the sonnets, and it links it to the Bassano family. And this, together with the other pieces of literary evidence, I think makes a very strong case that we have here in Willoughby His Avissa Amelia's first early love poems, which in fact talk about having an affair with the Earl of Southampton, and are the first documents in the world ever to refer to Shakespeare.